everyone, welcome back to Let's Play Great Ace Attorney 2. In our last episode, we found out that Albert Hairbrain was being duped, Suzato's back, and we got lots of work to do. This room. It's been too long. It hasn't changed in the slightest, though. And it's been some 6 months, hasn't it? That's a long time for things to stay so familiar. I didn't know when you might return, and I wanted everything to be as you left it. But it has been some 6 months, it's true. So, is your father alright, Susie? What happened? My father? Yeah, Professor Mikotoba. I mean, it was half a year ago, but that's why you went back to Japan. Because of the telegram you see saying you'd fallen ill with a very high fever for some unknown reason. That's right. So I was surprised to learn you'd be coming back so soon. Surprised but happy. I think I wrote about it in my letter to you. That was all a trick. My father is in fine health, and I'm obviously very relieved about that. Well, we're all delighted to have you back. It was quite by accident I've been able to return to Europe. Actually, it's because of a very grand conference called the International Forensic Science Symposium. Oh yeah, that's the same symposium Lord Strongheart mentioned. Anyway, I've arrived safe and sound, and all that matters is I'm here now. After all, I haven't yet fulfilled my promise to you, Iris. Oh! You must tell us everything that happened while you were back in Japan. Of course, I shall. And there's one other thing. Something you wrote in your letter that particularly grabbed my attention. About you-know-who. About Kazuma. I know. I'll tell you all that I can. Alrighty. When I first arrived back in Japan, I really thought I'd never be allowed to return to Britain. But curiously, after that awful trial at the Supreme Court, Father's mood changed entirely. Awful trial. Oh yeah. For the murder of Giselle Brett. Oh. You dressed as a man then, didn't you, Susie? Well, yes. Since women are forbidden in the courtroom, I had no choice. Wow, amazing. I wish I'd seen it. Don't you, Runo? Yes, I suppose so. I want to play at being a lawyer now. I could wear a false mustache, maybe. I don't think any mustache would hide the fact you're just 10 years old, Irish. There's something else I've been wanting to ask you, Miss Susato. It's about the real reason why Professor Mikotoba summoned you back to Japan. You said in your letter it was something to do with that convict's loot we found in Mr. Natsume's lodgings. That's right, the very large dog collar we found with the bee emblem on it. It seems Mr. Natsume included a drawing of the collar in the report he submitted about his time in Britain. I understand that when Father saw the report, he turned as white as a sheet. Why would that be, then? Father came to Britain himself, of course, to study. It was some time ago now, but he stayed for 6 years. I can only imagine something must have happened during that time. But if he refuses to tell me what it was, then I intend to find the answers for myself. And I decided that I, for one, won't keep any more secrets. Oh, Susie. That's a very meaningful look Suzato's giving Iris there. Alright, the Forensic Science Symposium. Lord Strongheart mentioned something about that symposium, too. I think he had said that the investigative authorities from 40 different countries would attend. Yes, and from Japan, my father and Judge Jigoku have been invited. It's something of an honor, I believe. Well, Professor Mikotoba is the leading expert in forensic medicine in our country, after all. But who's the other person you mentioned? The judge, did you say? Yes, His Excellency, Judge Seshiro Jigoku. You met him, Mr. Naruhodo. Last year, in the Supreme Court. You can't possibly have forgotten. That terrible trial of yours when you were accused of murder. Ah, I try to think of that as a positive turning point in my life these days. Well, it was Judge Dagoku who presided over that trial. If I'm perfectly honest, I'd be happy never to see that man's face again in my life. Oh well, anyway, as Father was invited to the symposium, he agreed to me returning to Britain too. He won't actually arrive until next month, but, well, I couldn't wait. So I pleaded with him, and in the end he agreed to me going on ahead. About the symposium. It seems as though Lord Strongheart has put in an awful lot of work to make it happen. It's obviously very important. I believe it is, yes. As I understand it, Lord Strongheart organized the entire event himself. Jeez, talk about working your nose to the grindstone. I think he's hoping that by achieving exceptional results, he'll get the job of Attorney General. Oh boy. The most senior position in the British justice system. He's hoping to use his power to create the world's finest policing institution. That's what Father said anyway. Apparently it's Lord Strongheart's lifelong ambition. Does Professor Mikotoba know Lord Strongheart personally then, I wonder? Actually, Lord Strongheart gave me a long speech about the subject only yesterday. I sort of lost the will to live early on and didn't really listen to much of it. How trying for you. Alright, Giselle Brett. Giselle Brett, the woman whose unforgivable actions ended in me being wrongly accused of a crime I didn't commit. The murder of Dr. John H. Wilson. Yeah, Giselle Brett. That's a name I won't forget for as long as I live. The extraordinary thing is, though, it seems it's a name we should all forget. Sorry. Since the incident, our government's intelligence services have been investigating Miss Brett. But it turns out that an Englishwoman by the name of Giselle Brett didn't actually exist. Didn't exist? But how could that be? It was a pseudonym. Her real name was Shin, and she wasn't a visiting student either. That was a front. Who on earth was she then? Miss A. Shin. Her name is literally all our intelligence services have been able to ascertain about her. Nobody knows why, or even how she came to be in Japan. It's a complete mystery. Oh, A. Shin. She was on that list that we found in last game. But that makes no sense. It's no easy task to be accepted as a foreign student anywhere. What could the woman have been up to? I'm afraid I really don't know. The only thing we can be sure of is that she had some business in our country that we don't yet understand. And now she's been killed, while all the questions surrounding her existence remain unanswered. I'm afraid so. A. Shin. Who on earth was she? And why do I feel as though I've heard that name before somewhere? After my friend Ray's trial, the reporter who actually killed Miss Brett said something very strange. I know the truth. I know you had a hand in what went on. In that visiting student's fate. Nobody here in Japan knows anything about it. They don't know the guy never made it to England, or that he died on that steamship, and that he'll never. Obviously, I couldn't ask him to elaborate at the time. But later I visited that man in his prison cell and asked him what he was going to say about Kazuma-sama. What did you learn? After he died on the voyage to Great Britain, his body should have been unladen at the port of Hong Kong and passed to the care of the consulate staff there. Should have been? Well, it turns out, his body never arrived. It just disappeared. What? Kazuma's body vanished? Our government tried to cover the fact up, it seems. They erected a grave on the cliffs by our hometown. Except, Kazuma-sama isn't there. There is some really shady stuff going on. Did Professor Mikotoba know about this? Yes, it would seem he did. But he didn't tell me. They're still investigating what happened to Kazuma-sama's body as we speak. I just don't believe it. And what is this acute feeling of apprehension I have all of a sudden? Thinking back now, some of the things that happened on the SS Burya were definitely strange. I mean, after he died, we never saw his body again, did we? Could it be? Could it be that he's actually still alive? Stop it, Mr. Naruhodo. It's too much to bear. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Just thinking about the possibility pains me so very much. Cast your mind back for a moment, Mr. Naruhodo. When Kazuma-sama was discovered, Mr. Sholmes was there, wasn't he? And he definitely examined the body. I remember it clearly. You're right. So if Kazuma hadn't actually been dead at all, it would mean Mr. Sholmes had lied to us. There's no reason why he could possibly have done such a thing. I suppose that's true, yes. No, there might be a reason. The idea he might still be alive somewhere. It wants to fill me with hope, but I can't let it. Because if it turned out not to be true, then I'd be back at the bottom of that awful pit of despair again. And Junko would be laughing all the way to the bank. I'm terrified of what that might do to me. I'll miss Susato. I know she's given the idea the thought it deserves. It's Susato-san we're talking about, after all. So I probably shouldn't push it now. Oh, there you are. It must be about a year ago now. I wrote a really long story based on some of my father's old notes. It's about one of Hurley's greatest exploits. I called it Hound of the Baskervilles. Yeah, I actually read that one. Long time ago. But then Mr. Sholmes forbade you from publishing it, and put the manuscript somewhere nobody would get their hands on it. So nobody knows anything about it apart from Hurley and I. But for some reason, you know the title of it, didn't you, Susie? Oh, it sounds so exciting. The Hound of the Baskervilles. I should love to read it. And you wouldn't tell me how you'd come to know it. Yes, but I made you a promise that I would explain one day, didn't I? I think it's time. Oh! I'm only sorry I've had to keep it from you for so long, Iris. It was completely by accident I came to know the title of your manuscript, Iris. It was a short while before we left Japan. I was cleaning Father's study, and I saw something on his writing desk. A large box of papers. There was a label affixed to the box that was written in English. It read, The Hound of the Baskervilles. What? My Baskerville story! Of course, I had no idea what it was at the time. But Father came in and... Susato, what are you doing? Oh, Father. Did you look at those papers? No, I simply read the label, that's all. Well, put it out of your mind. Sorry? Forget that you ever saw it, and certainly don't tell anyone else about this. Do you understand? There is something up with this story. But what was Iris's manuscript doing in Japan? I have no idea. But when I heard Iris mention the word Baskerville that day, the title just slipped out. I would never have guessed that it was an unpublished account of one of Mr. Sholmes' exploits. When I returned to Japan, I asked Father to explain. But he refused to answer any of my questions, and there was no sign of the big box in his office. That's really all I know about it. I've no doubt that Father has a very good reason for being so secretive about it, but still, I made up my mind to explain myself to both of you. Well, thank you for being so honest, Susie. So, Mr. Naruhodo, I'm ready to start investigating if you are. I've committed every detail about the case to memory. And Iris has told me about the disturbing happenings at the Waxwork Museum as well. So you're fully abreast of the situation already, Miss Susato. I'm expecting nothing less, to be honest. I would think our first port of call should be to investigate this Mr. Drebber, the engineer responsible for building the elaborate machine that was used to effect this extraordinary trick. A conjurer of sorts by the name of it, well known in the fields of science and magic. Then we need to go and arrest him! Well, yes. You must know the truth behind this case, so I agree we really need to find the man. It sounds like it's a case of tracking someone down. Which is a job for the police, or a great detective. Are we supposed to guess who she might be thinking of? We don't have much time, so we need to get started straight away. Good idea. Well, best of luck then. Are you not coming today? I'm going to Brixton Road shortly for the herb market. Let me know how you get on, won't you? That was a little abrupt. Pull of the herb market must be strong. Alrighty. Time to move. Yeah, we can't go there. Time to go to prison. Good lord, man. Do you ever sleep? What's he doing? He's... Oh my! The whole wall of the cell is covered in mathematical equations. Now is about the time to tell me you haven't got some kind of red alien goo monster in you. And he's still writing more now. Professor? Sorry to interrupt. Oh, Mr. Naruhodo. And who is this young lady? My name is Susato Mikotoba. I'm Mr. Naruhodo's judicial assistant. It's a pleasure to meet you, Professor. Oh, if only I'd met a refined young woman like you sooner. None of this would have happened. No, that's not logical. That makes no sense at all. Oh dear, I'm sorry if my presence here upsets you. I owe you an apology too, Professor. I didn't imagine to deliver what I promised you I would in court today. Oh, no. The whole thing, the whole miserable affair. It all happened because I've been such a complete and utter clot. Professor Harebrant? What have you been working on in your cell? Oh, you mean that? Oh dear, how embarrassing. I was suddenly struck by an idea, you see, and I simply had to write it down. The wall was all I had to hand. Oh, is it some new hypothesis? Something to surpass super high voltage instantaneous kinesis, maybe? No, actually. This is my autobiography. I'm not gonna say anything. Your autobiography? How I Was Diddled and Fiddled, by Albert Harebrain. You might want to change that title. I found I can represent my odd fortunes with only odd numbers and an ambitious set of simultaneous equations. Really? I'd have to pay back all the loans I took for the kinesis machine, you see. So it's going to be a new serial publication from next month. Part 1, an odd birth, an odd upbringing. You can't beat the man's optimism, that's for sure. Well, for now, would you mind if we talked a little more about the case? Oh, yes, of course. I've been working through the numbers. I was fiddled, by the pair of them. By Asman, and by the aloof engineer, Mr. Drebber. We're not going to have to sit through an explanation of all these equations, are we? The morning's trial. Drebber the engineer. Is he an engineer, or a magician, or a swindler? It was about a year ago when Mr. Asmund first brought Drebber to meet me in my laboratory. Since then, I've met him many times to discuss details about the Kinesis machine. But at no point did you have any inkling that he was just an illusionist. Oh, he definitely wasn't just an illusionist. What do you mean? He was a wealth of deep scientific knowledge. There's no question the man's a genuine scientist. It's instantly apparent in conversation. I see. But the wretched man deceived you, Professor. It's unforgivable. We must do everything we can to find him and bring him to justice. Are there no more clues you can give us to his whereabouts? I'm sorry. We only ever discussed the Kinesis machine. Nothing else. Although, just once, I did visit his workshop. What workshop? Drebber's enormous fabrication factory, where he constructed my great machine. Why didn't you mention this before? Enoch Drebber's workshop? There's every chance we might find the man there. So you've been to Drebber's place of work, then? Yes, just once, you understand. It was an enormous place. Plenty of room to construct the Kinesis machine, you see. Where can we find it? We have to go there at once. There's a good chance we'll find him there. Well, yes, definitely. I'm sure, as in, I'm sure you're not going to want to hear this. Lay the news on us. But I have absolutely no idea where the workshop is at all. I'm so sorry. I was more than half expecting that. You see, I was blindfolded in the carriage the entire way there. He blindfolded you. I wasn't taking any chances then. Or he wasn't. The place was incredible. The pinnacle of modern engineering. Even the oil he used was the very best. A special French machine oil that's impossible to obtain in Britain. Ah, the indescribable scent that imported oil. Perfumers across the world should forget their secret formula and use that instead. What do you think, Miss Susato? Ode the machine for your next birthday? I've never used any kind of perfume, Mr. Naruhodo. I'm not sure I'd like to start with that. I don't suppose you know even part of the workshop's address, Professor? You don't have a business card for Mr. Drebber, for example? The man was very clearly cautious, Miss Susato. I'm sure he never... Aha! Yes, I do! He gave me his business card once. It's right here. Let me see that. Throw etiquette to the wind, why don't you? Enoch Drebber, engineer. I'm afraid that's all it says. There's no address. Ah, well, can't say I'm surprised. Still, this could be useful. Well, we've got all we need here. It's time for us to move to the Lord Chief Justice office. Oh, who are you? Oh, who's that standing beside Lord Strongheart? I wonder. I've never seen her before. Ah, the young champion of the court. You had some success this morning, I understand. And you've thrown the entire government into disarray as a result. Oh, you mean because of Professor Harebrain's experiment? Sham science being demonstrated at London's Great Exhibition. The country's been made to look foolish, and now politicians are scrambling to respond. Lord Van Zieks is in Whitehall as we speak, giving an emergency briefing. Oh dear, I didn't mean to cause any trouble. None of this is your responsibility. The government is entirely to blame for having been taken in. The special dispensation that prevents investigation at the scene will be annulled later today. Once that happens, my forensic investigation team will move in and deal with that scrap metal in no time. It's scrap metal now, is it? Until later then, Lord Strongheart. Yes, thank you. She might be important. Who is that? That was Dr. Courtney Seath, Scotland Yard's esteemed chief coroner. Oh, she's the coroner. She's leading the forensic investigation team's handling of this case. She was just delivering her report about the victim, in fact. I see, about Mr. Asman. Following the outcome of the trial earlier, I asked the coroner's office to re-evaluate its findings. I don't have time to tell you what she concluded. If you want to know, you'll have to ask her directly. You can find her in the forensics laboratory. Right. Now, what were you here to see me about? I can give you 7 minutes and 39 seconds of my time. So he's not running quite so spectacularly late anymore. Alrighty, let's see what he's got. The forensic investigation team. What exactly is the forensic investigation team you mentioned before? The British Empire's police force must become the most exemplary in the world. For that to happen, it's imperative that we embrace forensic science and everything it has to offer. Yes. I first created the forensic investigation team a year ago. Now unofficially, of course. To pave the way. Goodness, a year ago? At next month's symposium, I want them to present the results of their work to the world. Once I do that, the House of Lords will be powerless to oppose the creation of a full-scale forensics division. Yes. And once that happens, the position of Attorney General will be mine, and criminals will suffer dearly. What do you mean? For too long, those scoundrels have made a mockery of our legal system with false evidence and bribes. Yes. But London's scum is about to be rounded up and burnt in the fires of hell. I intend to see to it personally. By creating the finest police force the world has ever known to protect our honor and our future. Look at those eyes. He means every word. Dr. Seath is an incredibly reliable coroner. When I officially establish the forensics division at Scotland Yard, she will run it as my right-hand woman. Now then, speaking of the symposium, Miss Mikotoba. Oh, yes, my lord. Your father should be on the high seas as we speak, making his way here to represent the Empire of Japan. Yes, that's right. I understand he will arrive at the beginning of next month. Are you acquainted, Lord Strongheart? With Professor Mikotoba, I mean. It was many years ago now, but yes. I remember Dr. Mikotoba very, very well. Oh, do you now? If my memory serves, it was some 15 years ago that your father came to Britain as a visiting student. It was the year I was born. So yes, 16 years ago, in fact. Mikotoba was a young practitioner of forensic science, and Jigoku accompanied him as a young, promising judge. The punctiliousness and politeness of the Japanese at the time impressed us greatly. Not that I wish to imply politeness or carelessness on your part in any way. I didn't think that you were. Dr. Mikotoba studied forensics at one of London's largest hospitals. St. Simon's, if I'm not mistaken. Dr. Seath was also there then, as it happens. Then Dr. Seath knows my father, does she? She was a young medical assistant at the time, so I doubt their paths crossed regularly. But I've no doubt they knew each other superficially. After all, Dr. Mikotoba was here studying his subject for some 6 years in total. 6 years. That's a long time to be studying abroad, isn't it? I lived with my grandmother in those years. So he left his newly born daughter behind and went overseas for 6 whole years. It was a rather turbulent time at home. Oh, perhaps Father wanted a reason to get away. Why? Well, clearly something was going on at the time. Alright, Lord Van Zieks. Let's address the elephant in the room. I wanted to ask you about Lord Van Zieks, actually. I heard his older brother was killed some years ago by a mass murderer known as the Professor who targeted nobles and royalty. Is that right? You Japanese are a thorough lot. You've done your research well. Yes. And you could say it was that very incident that gave rise to the Reaper. What? Why? When his brother, Clint Van Zieks, was murdered, it was just after young Barak had graduated from the University of London and became a prosecutor. When obvious criminals who managed to evade conviction in court started disappearing, rumors quickly spread that throughout the capital. Londoners started to say that wherever Barak Van Zieks went, the ghost of his dead brother wasn't far behind. Oh my word. So Lord Van Zieks isn't the Reaper. It's the ghost of his brother. Ever since that time, he became a very aloof figure in London's legal circles. Oh yes, Lord Strongheart. Go ahead. It's about Professor Harebrain's experimental machine. We'd like your permission to examine the remains, if possible. Are you well versed in science, then? Not in the slightest. In fact, you could say I was barely aware of the subject at all until recently. Well, the special dispensation legally preventing investigation of the machine is currently being annulled. Within a few hours, Dr. C's team of forensic experts will begin their own investigation. But I suppose until then, there's no harm in you looking at the wreckage, as long as you touch nothing. Yes. Thank you! Being able to look at it is better than nothing. And I'll be able to see it too. Your time is up. That's the longest 7 minutes I've ever had. You'll have to excuse me now, I'm afraid. My next engagement calls. Longest 7 minutes ever, but not quite as long as the entire Frieza fight in Dragon Ball Z, which was supposedly 5 minutes. Supposedly. We are extremely sorry to have troubled you when you are so busy, my lord. I have important matters to attend to in preparation for the symposium, you understand. Alright, with that out of the way, we will see you guys next time as we figure out what our next investigative course of action is. See you then.